hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to this channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. So today we're still going to continue with the Arab or with the Palestinian-Israeli crisis. Palestinian-Israeli crisis. And then today we are looking at, that by late 1987, the continued effects of, settlement expansion, bureaucratic encroachment, land seizures, several years of economic stagnation, and diplomatic stalemate has set the stage for an Arab rebellion in the West Bank and Gaza that quickly became known as the Intifada. So today's topic is talking about the Intifada. And what is the meaning of Intifada? Intifada simply means, it simply means shaking off. It simply means shaking off. Now, the uprising was distinguished by widespread street violence in which children and teenagers battled Israeli troops with rocks and stones. Now, the Israeli military was caught by surprise and proved ill-equipped to deal with the revolt. A grinding contest of wills ensued that soon claimed many civilian casualties and altered the political landscape. In February 1988, Shamir invited Secretary of State Scholz to intervene, but he tried in vain to revive the diplomatic process. Meanwhile, King Hussein had finally abandoned his former ambition to represent the Palestinians. Israel's international image was suffering as the media recorded scenes of Israeli soldiers beating young Palestinians in the street. Frequent closures of the areas also, severely disrupted the Palestinian economy, and Israel began to replace Arab day labor with immigrant workers from outside the region. The Israeli election in November 1988 gave Likud a slight majority. Shamir was still forming a government when in December, Arafat, speaking at the United Nations, Special United Nations meeting in Geneva, reiterated a declaration that he had made the previous month that he was ready to recognize, Israel and suspend terrorism, provided the Palestinians obtained a state. The United States promptly recognized the Palestinian Labor, Liberation Organization, that's the PLO, and opened a dialogue, with it. Arafat returned home from, I'm talking about the second Intifada now. Arafat returned home from the summit to Palestinian, and popular Arab acclaim. He had said no to both Israel and United States. In contrast, Barak's political support evaporated as he struggled to survive a new blow felt when when the Palestinians erupted in violence following a visit by Likud leader Sharon to the temple. Likud leader Sharon to the Temple Mount in September to promote Israeli sovereignty over the site. Rioting by Israeli Arabs further disturbed the situation as international efforts to restore peace failed. Cameras recorded the deaths of a 12 14-year-old Arab boy by gunfire in Gaza, and not long after, 2 Israeli soldiers were lynched in the West Bank. By spring 2001, hundreds had been killed, and most of them Palestinians. President Clinton made one last attempt to bridge the gap, but neither side accepted his parameters. Okay, the failure of the Camp David summit and the outbreak of what came to be known as the Al-Qissa Intifada, that is intifada, convinced a majority of Israelis that they lacked a partner in Arafat, to end the conflict. Barak paid political price, losing the partnership, to Sharon by nearly 25% of the vote in elections held in February 2001. Sharon formed a broad-based coalition government. The violence continued and escalated, even though Sharon in late 2003 announced a disengagement plan that called for Israel to withdraw its soldiers and remove Israeli settlers from the Gaza Strip and parts of West Bank. The death of Arafat in late 2004 paved way, for Israel and a more moderate Palestinian leadership to resume negotiation, and a ceasefire was agreed in early 2005 that reduced significantly the level of violence. Despite considerable opposition to Sharon's disengagement plan within Likud, Israel completed its pullout in September 2005. Sharon by then was weary of party infighting, and with other Likud moderates, formed the centrist Kadima, that is forward. Kadima Forward, that is Kadima party in November. He fell victim to the debilitating stroke in early 2006, just before parliamentary elections, and Ehud Olmert became acting president. Okay, now in 2005, okay, there was what is known as boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Okay, now this was a movement that was founded with the statement of principles, on July 9, 2005. Now it represents something of last resort. The Palestinians had been crushed by the military defeat of the Second Intifada. The living embodiment of the Palestinian movement, Yasser Arafat, was dead. Okay, that is the living embodiment of the Palestinian movement, Yasser Arafat. He had died. Okay, the newly installed replacement, Mohammed Abbas, and his leadership seemed to offer a respite, from violence. If there is going to be pressure on Israel to give Palestinian freedom, it was going to come from the grassroots and outside. Okay, so for decades, Israel has subjected Palestinians to brutal militarized repression and human rights abuses. Now during this time, governments around the world, including the UK, have allowed Israel to carry out this repression with impunity. The Palestine civil society called for a grassroots citizen support response, and in 2005, a coalition of over 170 Palestinian groups called on the world to join them by carrying out boycott, divestment, and sanction campaigns against Israel until it complies with international law. Okay, so those are just the major things that we may just need to know today. Okay, Now, but the critic of this, boycott, divestment, and all of that, actually argue that, it conflicts political anti-Zionism and criticism of the Israel government with racism, and the act of Jewish hatred is in fact, tantamount to demonization, and together with an alleged international resurgence of attack on Jews and Jewish symbols. These anti-Israel sentiments are used to mask anti-Semitic, attitudes. Now, it is actually very important for us to note that, you know, the crisis in the Middle East, I still insist, between Palestinians and the Israeli, is still in the hands of the Western world or the superpowers to actually broker peace between these two countries. Now, if the United Nations has actually proffered a solution to it by talking about two-state solution, why not actually, implement that decision? Now, recognizing the Palestinian state and the Jewish state, or the state of Israel, is actually the two-state solution that we are talking about. Once that is actually recognized, and Palestine is giving her state recognized by the United Nations, Israel is also giving, also Israel has been recognized already, then there won't be any need. And then, the borders are properly, partitioned. If the borders are actually properly partitioned and identified, the two states will actually be on their own, and there won't be much of these problems that keep coming up, every time. Thank you very much.